Hello, everyone. So in this video, we are going to talk about the chapter number 11, resource planning. So we will move to the chapter goals. So as you can see here, there are total 5 chapter goals in the book. We will stay focused on the first 3, mainly understanding the concept of dependent demand in material requirement planning, which is also known as MRP. Second chapter goal is to understand a master production schedule or MPS, and also learning to compute the available to promise quantity or ATP quantity. So I will be posting another video where we will solve a problem for the MPS and the ATP quantity. The third chapter goal is to apply the logic of an MRP or the material requirement planning explosion to identify production and purchase orders that's needed for dependent demand items. So these are the 3 chapter goals that we will stay focused on. This slide talks about the overview, competitive edge with resource planning. So talking about resource planning, it's a cornerstone of operational resources, and it's also very pivotal of the operational success. This resource planning process enables the organization to maintain a competitive edge. Let's unpack what this means in practice, okay? So first, resource planning ensures that the right resources, whether it is material or equipment or staff, the human resources, are available at the right time. For manufacturing companies, this could mean managing thousands of components and raw materials, as we have seen in the supply chain. Also, we have seen in the lean system how manufacturing companies has to deal with managing a lot of components, right? A lot of hardware that they need to manage to do the assembly and then finally getting the final product. A real life example, we saw videos on the Toyota's lean manufacturing system, where precise material planning ensures smooth operation and smooth production line without excessive inventory. So basically, by doing the resource planning, we are also making sure that the supply chain runs smoothly and also inventory is managed in an efficient way. For service industries or service providers, resource planning might involve scheduling employees and the equipment. Take the hospitality industry, okay, like the hotels, like Marriott. They use advanced resource planning tools to schedule staff shift based on the booking forecast, and they maintain an optimal guest experience. So you can see that how the resource planning is different between the manufacturing sector and the service sector. Now, at its core, resource planning integrates operational plans with detailed data, like time standards and production processes. This helps to determine what inputs are required and when it is required. This capability supports functional areas across an organization, from human resources to sales and finance. For instance, Amazon uses the Enterprise Revenue Planning System or ERP system to coordinate staffing, inventory, and shipping. And that ensures seamless fulfillment of millions of orders that they deliver daily. Specific techniques enhance this process. Now we are talking about the material requirement planning or MRP that helps manufacturers like Apple to align the production schedule with supply chain timing. So remember, these concepts are very important. Material requirement planning or MRP, that is actually helping the companies to align the production schedule with the supply chain timing. So when we are going to get the product and how that is getting fitted into the production schedule. That ensures components like microchips that Apple uses arrive just in time. On a broader scale, these ERP systems consolidate resource planning across an organization, as we have seen with Coca-Cola, where ERP ensures consistent supply chain and production management across the global markets. Even service providers apply these principles. Hospitals, for example, use MRP-like systems to manage medical supplies, staff schedule, and patient care requirement efficiently. Ultimately, resource planning does not just streamline the operations, it directly supports competitive priorities by improving efficiency, responsiveness, and customer satisfaction. Those are the three main pillars. With this understanding, businesses can better leverage their resources to meet the strategic goals. We now move on to the next slide. That's the first chapter goal, which is the material requirement planning. Now, this MRP is a system critical for managing inventory in manufacturing environment where dependent demand, this is a critical terminology, plays a central role. Now let's break this down and explore why it is so impactful using some real world applications. First, let's try to understand dependent demand. Unlike independent demand, which is driven directly by customer orders, dependent demand is tied to the production schedule. So this is having some interlock, right? The dependent demand. Independent demand, as the name suggests, it is driven directly by the customer orders. Take bicycle as an example. A company like Huffy, they produce bicycle for retail, and the demand for components like wheel rims depends on the number of bikes planned for production. If they are producing, let's say, 1,000 bikes, they will need 2,000 rims. No guessing required. This is different from independent demand, like selling replacement rims directly to customers, where forecasting is necessary. So now you know where independent demand is being discussed, forecasting is very, very important. But at the same time, when the dependent demand is being discussed, you basically know, like the example, you need 2,000 rims. That's a dependent demand for making 1,000 bikes. Now, how does MRP or material requirement planning help in this case? An MRP system uses three key inputs. One is the MPS or the master production schedule, which outlines what products need to be produced and when. The second one is the bill of materials, which acts like a recipe that details all components needed for each product. And the third and the final one is the inventory record, which shows what is already available. Together, these inputs allow the MRP system to determine what needs to be ordered, when needs to be ordered, and in what quantity. For example, Toyota uses MRP to coordinate thousands of parts across their global supply chain. If there is a delay in one part, MRP flags it. That ensures production schedule always stays on track. Another concept here is the MRP explosion. This process breaks down the demand for finished goods, like a bicycle, into all the individual components, such as handlebar, pedals, and frames. The system ensures everything aligns with the production timeline. That minimizes the delays or overstocking. So that is the concept of MRP explosion. One challenge manufacturers face is managing the dual demand. For instance, wheel rims may have both dependent demand for production and independent demand for replacement parts, which is being sold to the retailers. This MRP helps balance these demands by providing a clear picture of inventory need across both the scenarios. The concept of lumpy demand, which is in point number E, is another reality of production. Imagine a company decides to produce 1,000 bicycles at once. That creates a sudden and large demand for the components like rims and the pedals and whatnot. Without MRP, managing such spike would be very, very chaotic. MRP ensures that right materials are available precisely when it is needed. In real life, companies like Boeing rely heavily on MRP for complex products like airplanes, where thousands of components must come together seamlessly. Similarly, small businesses such as custom furniture maker, they use simplified MRP systems to ensure they have the right wood and hardware for each order. That avoids the delays for their customers. Ultimately, MRP is not just a tool, it's a strategy for efficiency. It reduces cost by optimizing inventory, improves the scheduling, and helps companies deliver product on time. This integration of demand forecasting and production planning is crucial in today's competitive manufacturing landscape. If you have seen manufacturing plants operate or even visited one, think about the behind-the-scene coordination happening all the time to ensure that material arrive at just the right time. That is MRP in action. Let's move to the next chapter goal and the next slide, which is the Master Production Scheduling, popularly known as MPS. This is a critical process in Material Requirement Planning or MRP, defining how many end items will be produced within the specific time frame. It breaks the sales and operation plan, popularly known as SNOP, into actionable product schedule that ensures the consistency and efficiency. Now let's explore its key components and processes. First of all, MPS quantities must align with the SNOP to preserve economic analysis accuracy. The timing and size of production quantities are determined based on the historical demand. Like you have the data from last 5 years or last 10 years. So that's where actually you get equipped with all the historical data, and then you can make the planning accordingly. Then the promotional needs and economic factor like setup and inventory carrying cost. Planner also consider capacity limitation, such as machine constraint or labor constraint, to allocate production resources effectively. This MPS process involves creating a prospective schedule that aligns with resource availability. If no feasible schedule can be developed, the production plan or resources get adjusted. Once it is finalized, the authorized MPS serves as an input to the material requirement planning. So now you know MPS is basically serving as an input to the MRP. That helps the operations determine production schedule and assembly schedule. Now, how to develop an MPS? The first step is to calculate the projected on-hand inventory. For example, in week 1, if inventory is insufficient, production must be scheduled to avoid shortage in future weeks. Timing and size of production quantities aim to maintain non-negative inventory balance, right? That's very obvious. A lot size policy, such as producing 150 units, ensures inventory meets demand efficiently. Then we are talking about another important concept called available to promise or ATP. MPS also supports marketing by providing ATP quantity, which represent uncommitted inventory that can be promised to customers. For example, if an MPS quantity of 150 units is planned for week number 2 and 91 units remain uncommitted, marketing can promise the delivery accordingly. So now you know how this process helps the marketing team to promise the delivery forecast. What are the challenges and adjustments? Now, changing MPS quantities close to completion can result in material shortage. It can also cause production delay or excess inventory. Many firms adopt a freeze policy that disallows the changes to the near-term schedule, especially in make-to-stock environment. MPS must reconcile with SNOP to ensure alignment between production output and aggregate resources. For instance, if MPS exceeds SNOP forecast, management must adjust resources or reduce MPS quantities. Ultimately, MPS drives the production efficiently, and it also drives the customer satisfaction by synchronizing outputs with demand forecast and operational capability. In this slide, there is one formula to calculate the projected inventory that is shown in the slide, which is basically how much inventory you have by end of the week is equal to inventory at the start plus MPS quantity minus the requirements inventory. So this is the only formula to calculate the projected inventory. Moving ahead to the last slide of this presentation, this is called the MRP explosion. Now, in this slide, we will focus on the key elements that drive the material requirement planning or MRP, including the explosion process, plus the bill of material or the BOM and inventory record, which all contribute to an efficient supply chain. Let's start with the concept of MRP explosion. After understanding the master production schedule and the independent demand, MRP brings together critical input such as the bill of material and inventory record to create a time-phased material requirement plan. This plan outlines the quantity of component which is needed and their required production time, which helps the businesses avoid stock out and overproduction. So both are bad for the business, stock out or overproduction. So these all processes help the business avoid those two negative scenarios. A key component in MRP is the bill of material. The BOM or bill of material is essentially a blueprint that lists all the parts and components that you need to build a product, including their relationship and quantity. For example, consider a simple ladder back chair. The BOM will tell you that to produce one chair, you need one ladder back sub-assembly, one seat sub-assembly, and several other parts like legs and miscellaneous supports. BOM not only help in determining which parts are needed, but also in understanding the part commonality, which is critical in reducing the inventory cost and enhancing the efficiency. For example, Apple uses part commonality across different generation of iPads that reduces the cost and increases the production efficiency by standardizing many of the same component. Next, we look at the inventory record, which is fundamental to the MRP. These inventory record track all inventory transactions such as new orders, receipts, and withdrawals. That ensures that inventory levels are accurate. Think of a component like a seat sub-assembly, which is used in multiple products. The inventory record helps to determine the weekly demand for this particular component, accounting for factors like lead time, which is basically how much time you need to get the product in hand, and the gross requirement. This system ensures that the required parts are available at the right time, and that avoids the delay in production. In real-life application, businesses that rely on MRP system, like automotive manufacturers, they use these principles to coordinate the complex supply chain. By accurately tracking components and their relation, MRP helps the businesses to keep the production flowing smoothly and meet the customer demand. In summary, this MRP explosion is a powerful tool for managing production schedule and inventory. By using BOM and inventory record, businesses can ensure that they have the right material at the right time, which ultimately leads to more efficient operation and ultimately satisfied customers. That brings us to the end of this presentation, this chapter 11 for resource planning. In a separate video, I'm going to discuss about the problem, which is basically from the chapter goal number 2, understanding a master production schedule and learn to compute the ATP quantity. That's all. Thank you.